My name is Chloe. I'm 32 years old. And a year ago, I took a lit match to my own marriage. It's funny. At the time, I didn't see it as an explosion, just a flicker, a stupid, drunken mistake that would burn itself out. Now I know the truth. I wasn't just playing with fire, I was the one who poured the gasoline. It all started with Jenna's hen party. In Ibiza, the name itself should have been a warning sign. Girls' trip, beach vibes, endless cocktails. You know how it goes. My husband, Owen, wasn't thrilled about me going. Ibiza? Isn't that a bit much? He'd asked, frowning over his laptop one evening. I'd laughed it off, told him he was being ridiculous. It's just a girls' weekend, oh. We're not teenagers anymore. We're going to lie by the pool and drink fancy gin. A lie, of course. We both knew it. But I felt like I deserved it. A little escape. A little reminder that I was more than just Owen's wife. I was Chloe, and Chloe needed to dance. I didn't need his permission. I was a grown woman. The flight was buzzing with cheap Prosecco and excited chatter. The villa Jenna had booked was stunning, with an infinity pool that bled right into the blue of the Mediterranean. The first night was tame enough. A nice dinner, a few drinks, back at the villa by midnight. Civilized. But the second night, that's when everything went sideways. We went to this massive club downtown, the kind you see in movies. Lasers cutting through fake smoke, the bass thumping so hard you could feel it in your teeth. I was feeling myself. I had a new dress on, a slinky black thing that made me feel dangerous. My hair was done. I looked hot. I knew I did. I had a few cocktails, then a few shots. Then, honestly, things get a little blurry. I remember dancing. The music was so loud it was like being underwater. I remember this guy. Dark hair, a sharp jawline that, in the flashing strobes, reminded me of Owen. It's ridiculous, I know. My drunk brain, desperate to justify itself, latched onto that one tiny detail. He looks like Owen. In that moment, with the lights blinding me and the alcohol singing in my blood, it was enough. My brain just went, this could be Owen. This is fine. It was the dumbest, most pathetic excuse a person could ever invent. The next thing I remember clearly is waking up. Sunlight was slicing through the blinds of a hotel room that wasn't mine. My head was pounding. A stranger was asleep next to me. When I actually got a good look at him in the daylight, he looked nothing like Owen. Nothing at all. Maybe the hair color, if you were being generous. Panic. Cold, sharp, and absolute. It cut through the hangover like ice water. I scrambled out of the bed, grabbing my dress from the floor, my shoes from under a chair. I didn't even look back. I just bolted. I made it back to our villa, a half-walk, half-run of shame through the morning streets. Jenna was up, drinking coffee by the pool. One look at me, hair a mess. Yesterday's makeup smudged down my face, clutching my heels, and she knew. I collapsed onto a sun lounger, sobbing. I made a horrible mistake, Jen. A horrible, horrible mistake. I swore her to secrecy. She promised she wouldn't say anything. And I, like an idiot, thought that was that. Back home in Manchester, I tried to act normal. More than normal. I became superwife. I smiled more. I initiated sex with Owen almost every night. I cooked his favorite meals. I was trying to scrub the guilt off my skin with good deeds. For a few weeks, I actually thought I'd gotten away with it. I kept telling myself it was a one-time thing. A stupid, drunken mistake that didn't have to ruin my life. My perfect life. With my good, stable, handsome husband. I thought I had it under control. The calm lasted for about 3 weeks. 3 weeks of me holding my breath, walking on eggshells, and pretending Ibiza never happened. Then came that awful day. Owen called me at work. Hey, can you meet me for lunch? It wasn't a question. His voice was weird, controlled, flat. Not the usual warm, easy tone I was used to. This wasn't a cute surprise lunch date. This was a summons. My stomach dropped. When I got to the restaurant, a little Italian place we used to love, one look at his face told me everything. His expression was perfectly blank. A mask. But his ears were bright red. His tell. The only sign he ever gave when he was truly incandescently furious. He didn't even wait for the menus. I know what happened in Ibiza, he said. His eyes were cold. A shade of blue I'd never seen before. Tiffany's husband. One of the other girls on the trip. Her husband is friends with one of Owen's colleagues. Word got back. A stupid, messy chain of gossip had just ended my marriage. I completely lost it, right there in the middle of the restaurant. I started sobbing. Ugly, gasping sobs. Mascara was probably streaming down my face. I was babbling about how drunk I was, how the guy looked just like him, how it was a stupid, horrible, meaningless mistake. I was throwing every excuse I could think of at the wall, just hoping something would stick. The whole, "he looked like you," excuse sounded pathetic, even to my own ears. But I was desperate. Owen just watched me melt down. He had this detached look, like he was a scientist observing a specimen. When I finally ran out of steam, my voice raw from crying, he just stood up. He put a 20-pound note on the table for our waters. "I need some time," he said. His voice was still flat, empty. "Don't call me." And he left. He didn't come home for a week. A whole week. That was the longest week of my life. I was a ghost in our own house. I called him. I texted. I left tearful, rambling voicemails. Nothing. I was terrified. Was he off finding the guy from the club? Talking to divorce lawyers? The not knowing was eating me alive. I barely ate. I barely slept. When he finally came back, he looked different. Thinner. Tired. But calmer. And colder. So much colder. He sat me down on the sofa. The same sofa where we used to cuddle and watch movies. It felt like a courtroom. "Here's how this is going to work," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "If you want to save this marriage." I held my breath. "No more drinking. Period. Not a drop." I nodded frantically. "No more girls' trips. Any trip you take, I go with you." I nodded again. "And I get complete transparency. Your phone, your social media, passwords to everything. One slip-up, one lie, and I'm gone. For good. Do you understand?" "Yes," I whispered, tears of relief starting to form. "Yes. Anything. I would have agreed to anything. I was just so relieved he was giving me another chance. He wasn't leaving me. That's what I thought, anyway. I didn't realize he wasn't giving me a second chance. He was giving me a life sentence. And he was going to be my warden. But in that moment, all I felt was a wave of pathetic gratitude. He was staying. That was all that mattered. Or so I thought. I haven't touched alcohol since that day. I became the perfect wife. I cooked. I cleaned. I was waiting for him when he got home from work. I did whatever he wanted. I thought, eventually, with enough time and enough good behavior, things would go back to normal. That was a year ago. Things never went back to normal. I started noticing the changes about a month after our conciliation, if you can even call it that. Owen was already an attractive man. He's tall, naturally fit, with this quiet confidence that always made heads turn. But suddenly, he kicked everything into overdrive. He doubled his gym time. He went from 3 days a week to 6, sometimes 7. He started meal prepping. Our fridge, once filled with wine and cheese and takeout leftovers, was now rows of identical plastic containers. Chicken, broccoli, brown rice. He downloaded meditation apps, bought a whole new wardrobe of sharp, tailored suits and fitted shirts that showed off his increasingly muscular frame. At 39, he started looking better than guys in their 20s. At first, I thought it was hot. My husband, getting even sexier? Yes, please. I figured maybe this was his way of rebuilding his confidence after what I did. It made sense. I even tried joining him. "Maybe I'll come to the gym with you on Saturday?" I suggested one morning. He didn't look up from lacing his running shoes. "No, it's fine. This is my thing." My thing, not our thing. That's when I realized something was really different. Before Ibiza, Owen would have been thrilled to have me join him for workouts. He loved sharing things with me. Now, he seemed annoyed by my presence, like I was intruding on his sacred space. When I tried to be flirty about his new muscles, tracing a finger over his bicep, he'd just say, "Thanks," with barely a smile and pull away. It wasn't just the physical changes. His entire focus shifted. He started staying later at the office. He was a financial consultant, always busy. But this was different. Working toward a promotion, he'd say. Weekend brunches with me were replaced with networking events. Our date nights dwindled to maybe once a month. And even then, he seemed distracted, his eyes always scanning the room, his phone buzzing on the table. "I'm just working toward our future," he'd say when I complained about his absence. But it felt more like he was working toward his future. a future where I was no longer a priority. Then came the social events for his firm. Suddenly, there were all these happy hours and client dinners that I wasn't invited to. It's just work stuff. You'd be bored, he'd say, coming home late, smelling of expensive cologne and sometimes a hint of perfume that wasn't mine. When I would question him about these late nights, he'd roll his eyes. I'm networking, Chloe. That's how you get ahead. He said it like I was some idiot who couldn't understand basic career advancement. Like I was a child. The man who used to tell me every detail of his day now gave me vague, dismissive summaries. The wall between us was getting higher, brick by brick, and he was the one building it. I just stood on the other side, watching him disappear. The most infuriating part? Our sex life. It completely changed. Before, Owen was always the one initiating, always passionate, always telling me how beautiful I was. Now, he rarely made the first move. When we did have sex, maybe once a week if I was lucky, it felt too mechanical. Like a chore, he was ticking off a list. He was physically present, but emotionally, he was a million miles away. Is something wrong? I asked him once, after a particularly disconnected encounter. He was already rolling away from me, turning his back. Nothing's wrong. Just tired from the gym. It was always the gym, or work. An endless list of excuses that all meant the same thing. I don't want you. I tried everything to get his attention back. New lingerie, surprise lunch visits to his office, texting him flirty messages during the day. His responses grew increasingly lukewarm. A thumbs-up emoji. A one-word answer. It was like watching someone slowly check out of a relationship while still physically being there. He was haunting our marriage. Something was changing in my husband, and it terrified me. He wasn't leaving. Not technically. He came home every night. He slept in our bed. But emotionally, he was already halfway out the door. And the worst part was, I couldn't really blame him, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to these changes than just recovering from my betrayal. My guilt started to curdle into suspicion. Then suspicion festered into paranoia. One night, I found a long, blonde hair on his suit jacket. I held it up to the light, my heart hammering in my chest. I confronted him as soon as he walked in. I tried to sound calm, but my voice was shaking. Whose is this? He didn't even flinch. He glanced at the hair in my hand. Probably Stephanie from accounting. We were stuck in the same elevator today. His explanation was so casual, so dismissive. It made me feel crazy for even asking. It made me feel like the jealous, hysterical wife. And maybe I was. After that night, my paranoia went into overdrive. I started checking his phone whenever he left it unattended. I'd scroll through his texts, his emails, his call history, looking for evidence of something, anything. A secret number, a flirty message, a hotel booking. Most days, I'd find nothing suspicious. Just work emails, texts with his gym buddy about protein shakes, normal stuff. But the lack of evidence almost made it worse. It meant that if he was cheating, he was being incredibly careful about it. He was smarter than me. I began tracking his location through his phone. I'd watch the little dot move from our house to his office, sometimes to the gym, occasionally to restaurants or bars I didn't recognize. During these unknown stops, I'd text him casually, "Hey, how's your day going?" just to see how long it would take him to respond, and what excuse he'd give. In a meeting, grabbing coffee with the team. His responses were always plausible. Nothing I could prove was a lie, but nothing that reassured me either. The Owen I married would have sent me a picture of his colleagues, or invited me to join them for a drink after work. This new Owen kept his worlds completely separate. I was no longer welcome in his professional life, and he seemed perfectly content with that arrangement. I started dropping by his office unexpectedly. "I was in the area and brought you lunch," I'd say, forcing a bright smile. The receptionist always had this pitying look on her face, like she knew something I didn't. Owen would emerge from his office looking annoyed, accepting my lunch with a tight, forced smile before ushering me back towards the elevator. "You can't just show up here, Chloe. I have meetings. Clients. It's unprofessional." Before my mistake, he'd always been thrilled to see me at his office. He would have showed me off. Now, I was an inconvenience, an embarrassment. One afternoon, I drove by the gym during his usual workout time. I just had to know. I had to verify that's where he actually was. I spotted his car in the parking lot and felt a momentary wave of relief, until I went inside and couldn't find him anywhere. Not on the treadmills, not in the weights area. I waited in my car in the parking lot for 40 minutes, my stomach twisting into knots. Finally, he emerged. He was with a woman, a fit woman in expensive-looking workout clothes. They were laughing about something as they walked to their cars. There was no touching, nothing obviously inappropriate, but the familiar, easy way they talked made my stomach turn. When Owen got home that evening, I casually asked about his workout. My voice was shaking. "Did you go alone today?" "Yeah, just the usual routine," he said, not even looking up from his phone. The lie hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. I wanted to confront him, to scream about the woman I'd seen. But what proof did I have? They were just talking. If I accused him of something more, he'd know I was spying on him. He would have the upper hand. He would make me the villain. So I swallowed my suspicion and my pride and said nothing. It felt like swallowing poison. Everything came to a head 3 months ago. It was at this fancy work party, a charity gala. Owen actually invited me. I spent hours getting ready. New dress, a salon visit, the works. I thought, maybe this was it. Maybe this was his way of finally bringing me back into his life. A public declaration that we were okay. I should have known better. The moment we walked into the rooftop ballroom, I realized why he'd brought me. He wanted me to see. He wanted me to see exactly what I was up against. The room was filled with gorgeous women, the kind with legs for days and perfect hair and teeth that glowed in the dark. And they all knew my husband. "Owen! Oh my God! You look amazing." A tall redhead in a backless dress practically launched herself at him, air-kissing both his cheeks. "That new workout routine is definitely working." She gave him this slow, up-and-down look that made me want to pull her hair extensions out. "Thanks, Vanessa," Owen replied, giving her the kind of warm, charming smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. "The trainer you recommended is brutal, but worth it." Throughout the night, it was the same story with different women. They would spot Owen from across the room. Their faces would light up, and they would glide over in their perfect bodies and designer outfits. I just stood there, next to him, an accessory. My dress, which had looked so amazing in my mirror at home, now felt cheap. I felt like complete and utter garbage. "Who are all these women?" I whispered to Owen between his adoring fan encounters. "Just colleagues," he said casually. "That's Vanessa. She's a model our firm represents. Same with Alexis over there. And Madison." I glanced over at Madison. Tall, blonde, probably 25, wearing a dress that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. "You represent a lot of models, huh?" I couldn't keep the bitter edge out of my voice. Owen just shrugged. "The entertainment division is growing. It's good for business." As the night wore on, I watched these women flirt shamelessly with my husband. They touched his arm when they laughed at his jokes. They whispered things in his ear that made him smirk. One even had the nerve to straighten his tie, her hands lingering on his chest for just a second too long. And the worst part? Owen wasn't exactly flirting back. But he wasn't shutting it down, either. A wink here. A knowing smile there. He was soaking up the attention like a sponge, while I stood by his side, invisible. Then, a particularly stunning brunette handed Owen her business card. "We should get coffee sometime," she said, her voice a low purr. That was it. I'd had enough. I grabbed his arm as soon as she walked away, my nails digging into the fabric of his suit. "What is happening right now? Are you seriously going to get coffee with her?" Owen slipped the card into his pocket with a casual shrug. "It's networking, Chloe. That's how business works." "That wasn't business. She was practically undressing you with her eyes." He gave me this look. A look I'll never forget. It was part amusement, part pity. It made me feel 2 inches tall. "Don't worry about it." And then he delivered the final blow. "It's not a bachelorette party in Ibiza. F2. The comment hit me like a physical slap. He had never, not once in the entire year, thrown my mistake in my face so blatantly. I just stood there, speechless, as he walked off to chat with some senior partner, leaving me alone at the bar. On the Uber ride home, I tried to talk to him about it. My voice was trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. "Those women were all over you, and you did nothing to stop it. They were being friendly. You're overreacting." "En du fort, friendly?" That blonde literally asked if you'd been working out while staring at your crotch. Owen just looked out the window, at the blurry city lights. "Maybe you're projecting," he said quietly. "Not everyone crosses lines when they're being social." Another dig. Another twist of the knife. I shut up after that. That night, watching him get ready for bed, moving around our bathroom with this new, lethal confidence, his body more defined than I'd ever seen it, a terrifying thought hit me. My husband was turning into someone who was out of my league. And he knew it. He wasn't just rebuilding himself. He was upgrading. And he was getting ready to leave his old life and me behind. I'd wanted clarity. An answer. Anything to stop the agonizing uncertainty. I got it last week. It wasn't the answer I was hoping for. A full year after Ibiza, the final nail in the coffin of our marriage appeared out of nowhere, disguised as a celebration. Owen came home with a bottle of champagne, the expensive kind. For a fleeting, stupid moment, I thought maybe this was a gesture of reconciliation, an anniversary of our new beginning. He popped the cork, poured 2 glasses, and handed one to me with a genuine smile. A smile I hadn't seen in months. "I made partner," he said simply. I forced a smile back. My face felt stiff. "Wow, that's amazing, Owen. Congratulations." I tried to sound genuinely happy for him. I really did. But inside, all I could think about were all those late nights, all those networking events, all the time he'd stolen from me, from us, to achieve this. This promotion had cost us our marriage, whether he realized it or not. We clinked glasses. I waited for him to say something about us, about how things would be different now that he'd reached his goal. Instead, he said something that shattered what was left of my world. "I've been in therapy for the past 10 months. I nearly choked on my champagne." "Therapy? Why? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to figure some things out on my own," he said, taking a long sip of his drink. He looked calm, resolved. "I've been working through what happened in Ibiza, my feelings about our marriage, what I want for my future." Endo. My blood ran cold. "And what conclusions have you come to?" I asked, my voice a barely audible whisper. I was already dreading the answer. He looked me right in the eye. No anger, no accusation. Just calm, devastating certainty. "I want a divorce, Chloe." The words just hung there in the air between us. Silent, deadly. "But I thought you were trying to forgive me," I stammered, the champagne glass trembling in my hand. "I have forgiven you," he said, and his voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. "This isn't about punishment. It's about recognition. We're not good for each other anymore." Is there someone else?" I had to ask, even though a part of me didn't want to know. "No," he said, and I believed him. "This is about me. About me finally putting myself first." He explained that he'd already found an apartment, that he'd be moving out the following weekend. Everything was arranged. Lawyers, finances. He'd even made a list of who would get which furniture. He had been planning this for months. Months. While I was busy checking his phone and following him to the gym, he was methodically, quietly, building his escape route. "What about everything we've built together?" I pleaded, my voice breaking. 3 years of marriage? Just gone? Owen gave me a sad smile. The pity was back in his eyes. "What exactly have we built, Chloe? A relationship where you cheated within the first year? Where I've spent the last 12 months trying to rebuild my self-worth? Where you've been more focused on catching me doing something wrong than on fixing what you broke?" I had no answer for that. He was right. The next few days were a blur. Owen packed his things methodically. No arguments over possessions, no dramatic scenes, just the quiet, efficient dismantling of our life together. On his last day in our house, my house, now I made one final desperate attempt. I cornered him in the hallway as he carried a suitcase to the door. "Please don't do this," I cried. "We can go to therapy together. I can change. I'll do anything." He paused, his hand on the doorknob. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in what felt like a year. "You know what my therapist helped me realize, Chloe?" he said, his voice soft. "She helped me realize that I deserve someone who wouldn't have cheated in the first place. Someone who values faithfulness the same way I do. It was one mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or burning dinner," he said, his voice still unnervingly calm. "You made a series of choices, Chloe. You chose to drink too much. You chose to dance with that guy. You chose to go to his hotel. And after all that, you chose to lie about it until you were caught." He wasn't angry as he said this. That would have been easier to handle. He was just clear. Like he was finally seeing our relationship for what it really was. A liability. I wish you the best. I really do, he said, and I could tell he meant it. But we're done. I watched through our front window as he loaded the last of his things into his car. He looked lighter, unburdened. The man who drove away wasn't the same man I'd married 3 years ago. He was stronger, more confident, completely self-possessed. He was a stranger. That night, scrolling mindlessly through social media to distract myself from the crushing silence of the empty house, I saw a post from Vanessa, the redhead from the party. It was a group photo at some chic rooftop bar downtown. And there was Owen, in the background, smiling. A real smile. A glass in his hand, surrounded by his colleagues, celebrating his promotion. He looked happy. Genuinely, effortlessly happy. Without me. 2 days later, my friend Jenna sent me a link to a property listing. A stunning condo that had just sold in one of the city's most exclusive new buildings. Isn't this the building Owen wanted to buy in last year? Her text read. The one you said was too expensive? Sure enough, there was Owen's name on the public purchase record. He'd bought the luxury condo he'd shown me months ago. The one I'd dismissed as unnecessarily fancy. He had been planning this move. This new life. Right under my nose. The irony isn't lost on me. A year ago, I thought I could have a wild night in Ibiza with no consequences. I thought my husband would always be there. Always adoring me. Always putting me first. Now he's gone. Living his best life in a fancy condo. Making partner. Looking better than he ever has. And I'm still here. In the house we bought together. Alone with the consequences of my actions. Sometimes I wonder if he orchestrated this whole thing. The glow-up. The career advancement. All of it. Just to show me exactly what I threw away that night in Ibiza. But I know that gives me too much credit in his story. The truth is, I'm not the main character in his life anymore. I'm not even a supporting character. I'm just the prologue. The messy, embarrassing chapter he had to get through to start his real story. A story where he's the hero. And me? I'm just stuck in the aftermath. Finally understanding what it truly means to watch someone become completely and irrevocably out of your league.